Hey, welcome to Mind Your Own Biz, the podcast where we help small business owners with big dreams build something authentically you. I'm Alicia Yervis, educator, marketer, designer, nacho enthusiast, and your big sister in business. I'm excited for us to have this cozy spot to chat. Each episode, we'll tackle candid conversations, actionable tips, and a few fun tangents to help you run your business your way. Because business is always personal, no matter what anyone says. So grab your iced coffee or those nachos and let's get started. Hi there, and welcome to another episode of Mind Your Own Biz. My name is Alicia Yervis, and I am your host. I'm very excited to have you here with me today. And today I'm doing something very different because I have just officially announced my first ever live workshop. Not a masterclass or a webinar where I am, talking at you for 45 minutes and then I pitch a course at the end, which of course I'm still going to do those in the future. But this is something different where there's no pitch. It's just you come and for an hour, we hang out and you're going to learn something really cool that's going to change your freaking life because it has changed mine. And there's time for Q&A at the end. So let me tell you a little bit about it. So my new workshop is called Easy with AI, Streamline and Save Time with ChatGPT. So this is going to be a virtual workshop on Thursday, March 27th at 1:30 p.m. Eastern. And you're going to learn how to simplify it all. So to sign up, you're going to go to aliciayervis.com/AI workshop. You can find the link on my website. But let me tell you a little bit about this particular event. So if you think ChatGPT is just for helping you write newsletters and Instagram captions, not even close. It does so much more. And it can actually save you tons of time, effort, and stress once you know how to use it the right way. So in this hour-long workshop with a Q&A, or plus a Q&A at the end, I'm going to show you how to use ChatGPT as your own personal assistant, helping you brainstorm, plan, organize, research, and streamline your daily tasks so you can work smarter, not harder, in both your business and your life. So again, this is going to be Thursday, March 27th at 1:30 p.m. Eastern. It's a virtual event on Zoom. There is an early bird rate right now where the workshop is $44, and that early bird rate expires on March 20th, and then it goes up to the full price of $77. So if you are listening to this before March 21st, get in there for $44. Otherwise, full price starts on March 21st for $77. And here's the cool thing. If you cannot make it live, no worries, because you'll get a recording either way, so you can watch it or rewatch it anytime that's easy for you. So what's included? It's a live 60-minute workshop with screen sharing demos that I'm going to be leading you through. There is extra time at the end for Q&A, so you can get your questions answered. There's going to be a digital workbook that you'll get, so you can play around with prompts as we go, which is cool and interactive. And like I said, you're going to get that replay recording, so you never have to worry about missing anything. I have found that ChatGPT is my secret weapon for making my business and life way easier. So this workshop is going to be all about keeping things simple, because AI should be easy and fun, not overwhelming, not scary. We're going to start with the basics. So I'm going to lead you through what ChatGPT is, how to sign up if you haven't already, and how to get way better results when prompting inside ChatGPT. And you're going to learn what prompting is. Then I'm going to share my screen, and I'm going to take you behind the scenes with some live demos to show you all the unexpected but insanely helpful ways it can make your life and business easier. You're about to make things effortless, finally. So I'm really excited to teach you all of these cool tricks. Some of the things that you can do in here. So save brain power by letting it sort through info, summarize emails, and organize ideas. Brainstorm fresh marketing ideas when you feel stuck. Help you plan your content faster so there's no more blank screen panic. Create a to-do list that actually makes sense. You could map out a launch plan or break a big project into little baby steps. You could write a quick script for a reel so you don't freeze on camera. You can use it to research new tools and trends or even competitors without falling down into a Google rabbit hole. It can even help you whip up a meal plan or a grocery list in seconds. Maybe you want to plan a trip, create an itinerary, find things to do in a new city, help you repurpose old content in a fresh way, like so much more. You guys, it's incredible. I love it. And I just want you to open your eyes to all the ways that can help your business and life besides just, oh, like it can help me write an email, it can help me write a social media caption. Sure, it can help you with that too, but the power of what it really can do is incredible. I use it every single day in my life and my business. So what you're going to leave this workshop with is a super clear, easy to follow understanding of ChatGPT, where no tech overwhelm, like I promise. Several custom ChatGPT examples from our workbook that you could start using right away. The confidence to prompt smarter and get way better results. A recording to revisit anytime you need a refresher. And a whole new perspective on how much easier your business and life can be with ChatGPT on your side. So this isn't just an AI webinar. It's a fun hands-on experience where you'll finally get to, you'll understand how to make ChatGPT work for you. And once you do that, you're going to wonder how the frig you ever lived life without it. So sign up now, make your life way easier with ChatGPT. Again, that early bird rate is good through Thursday, March 20th for $44. And then it jumps up to $77 full price starting March 21st. And the event is going to be Thursday, March 27th at 1:30 p.m. Eastern. So to sign up, head to aliciayurvis.com/AI workshop and we'll get you all set up. So can't wait to see you there. I'm really excited. This is my first workshop like this done in this way where, there's no pitch at the end. It's just a one-time, wham, bam, thank you, ma'am. And you're going to walk away with something really cool in your pocket. So I'm really excited. Okay, so today's guest, I am thrilled to welcome Kelly Hale, affectionately known as Kelly Kale, due to her love of growing and eating veggies. And she has spent over 25 years as an occupational therapist, a movement specialist, and nervous system regulation practitioner, helping people move from fight, flight, freeze to ease. I love that. With expertise in Pilates, brain gym, and craniosacral therapy, she empowers people to reconnect with their bodies, tap into resilience, and find healing through movement. She's also a former meditation dropout. No matter how hard she tried, she couldn't quit her racing mind or sit still. Hello, ADHD. And just as you guys know, I have ADHD too, so I super relate to that statement. So instead of forcing what didn't work, she met herself where she was at, in movement. When she couldn't find exactly what she needed, she created it. That's how Gutsy Brain Movement was born. A blend of nervous system regulation, corrective exercise, and developmental movements, combined with gut health and emotional well-being to help people feel strong, safe, and at home in their own bodies. Kelly's work is deeply personal as well as professional. Her own journey through chronic health challenges, celiac disease, and fertility struggles reinforced what she now teaches. When we support the gut and regulate the nervous system, true healing becomes possible. She's also a passionate advocate for emotional, emphasize on motion, emotional well-being, helping people process and move through the patterns that keep them feeling stuck. When she's not creating inspiring content and loving up on the amazing people in her membership, Kelly loves spending time with her husband and teen daughter in Metro Detroit, dancing, hiking, caring for her ever-growing collection of houseplants, and walking her 2 rescue hounds, including Snoopy, who happily snoozes through her sessions at her practice, modeling nervous system regulation. So I'm very excited to welcome today, Kelly Hale. So hello, my friend. Thank you so much for being on the podcast. It's so nice to finally connect. We've been chatting for a bit on Instagram, getting to know each other. And it's just so nice to see your face. And for those of you who are listening, but maybe not watching, Kelly's background is incredible. It's like beautiful green plants behind her hanging on the wall, and it totally matches her vibe. It matches the Kelly Kale connection that I just talked about in the intro. And I just love I love how it all looks. So if you're listening to this on Spotify, go check it out on YouTube so you can see the background because it looks great. So hi,
Oh,
Kelly.
thank
Thank you so
you.
much for being here.
Thank you. I love what you bring, the energy, the colorful playfulness, the realness. And I'm really honored to be here with this audience that you, I can tell, very thoughtfully have invited into the sphere. So thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for saying that. I appreciate that. Like, I'm still a newbie podcaster, but I'm having so much fun doing it and just getting to know so many awesome guests and learning so much about all kinds of new things too that
Mhm.
definitely are helping my audience and helping my peers and my friends. We're all out here doing
Sure.
the thing, and we
Right.
need support, we need help, we need tips, we need ideas.
Absolutely.
So in the intro, I talked a bit about your background, and who you are and what you do. And your background is so unique. 25 years as an OT, nervous
Mhm.
system regulation, gut
Mhm.
health, movement, dance, now your own business. So how did this all kind of come together for you?
Oh, goodness. So I'll try to keep this short and sweet. So I fell in love with dance early on and then through high school and college was dancing. And in high school, I danced at a studio where they had aerobics classes way back in the day. And,
Mm-hmm.
like I wasn't getting enough movement. If I had my homework done, I'd drop into an aerobics class. And one day they were like, oh my gosh, Kelly, the teacher didn't show up. We need you to teach. So here I am, a 16-year-old teaching. I was like, okay. I had dance background and I did it once and I said I enjoyed that, but it could be better and I need to have more behind me. So I wanted to become certified to become a group fitness instructor. But I was 16, nobody would touch that. And so I had to petition. And by the time I was 17, I got a group to certify me. So I became certified. And in studying the book, I loved the exercise and health science component. So then I went to undergrad, studied exercise and health science, and knew that I wanted something more than just fitness. Like I wanted to go deeper with people. My father had numerous surgeries after a traumatic accident. He was in and out of therapy. And I knew I
Mm,
wanted something with rehab. And I had to decide between OT and PT school. And I really loved the OT side, having the mental health component. And I know a lot of PTs who are very creative too, and a lot of my friends are amazing, talented PTs, creative, and the mental health side. And OTs have always been holistic. Like we can work
mm,
on mental health as well as the physical recovery. So I went to OT school. And then when I was in that program in grad school, we had to do a project, a community service project. And my project was to open a business that was holistic wellness. And then a
mm,
few years after I got out of OT school, I was working in traditional environment and we were seeing patients in shorter and shorter time frames. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I want an hour, 45 minutes at least with the people I serve. And then when it became 20 and 30 minutes, I'm like, this is not what I would want for my family. So I joked that I was brave enough or stupid enough in my 20s to step out, open the first multidisciplinary, holistic rehab and Pilates studio. And I didn't
mm.
really know what I was doing business wise, but I really had a heart for service. And so I did that and loved it. But pretty quickly, people were starting to text and things were becoming more and more um, invasive, let's say, like people's personal space and presence. And so I was like, wait a second, I have an hour with these people, but it's taking 30 minutes to get them back in their body because they're so stressed
Mm-hmm.
out, distracted, anxious, not centered. And so I started to study something called brain gym, GYM, like gymnasium. And I found that work to be profound. And I went back also, what runs parallel to that is going back to early development and reflexes, which I had a lot of training in as an OT, but I wanted to go deeper. And so I was helping the people I served get back in their body, be more present, be less anxious. And guess what? At the same time, I was helping myself because I was an anxious, stressed out business owner running around trying to do all the things 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, not healthy. I felt like an imposter because I was promoting health, but behind the scenes, I was running myself into the ground. So
Mm,
as I'm studying all those techniques, I'm practicing what I promote. And in the
mm-hmm.
process, I had a huge revelation. I found that I didn't have to push through life from a place of fight, flight, freeze, i.e., survival, to be successful. I didn't have to be an overachieving perfectionist. I could still achieve, but from a place of ease and joy and what I love to call peaceful productivity. So my work is
Mm,
both deeply personal and professional because I get to serve people with all different sorts of situations. And a big part of that too is gut health. People don't realize that that gut stress that you have is feeding into your anxiety. So when we work with the nervous system and the structure, we can also calm down that irritable gut, if you will.
mm-hmm. Oh man, first of all, I love that you started on your entrepreneurial journey at such a young age, and you're kind of just like, I'm just whatever. I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm doing it anyway.
Yes.
And
Yes.
that in and of itself, like no matter what your industry is, I just love that message so much because that's what
Mm,
I'm trying to get people to do more of in their business is like
mhm.
it doesn't have to be perfect. You just have to
Right.
like start. You have to
Right.
try. So
Yes.
I love that. And what an
Yeah.
inspiring story for
And I
how
just
it kind of set you on your path. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say one thing about that. Was so naive. I always joke I was brave enough or stupid enough, but I really don't. No longer do I call myself names like that. When I was in my 20s, I
Hmm.
would have, but I was just naive. And I remember about 5, 6 years into it, I can remember exactly where I was standing at the front desk, and I was, wrapping up the session, and this woman said, "Wow, you're really a risk taker." And I thought, "What? Me, a risk taker? I study, I work hard. How's that a risk taker?" And she's like, "You opened a business." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, she's right. I took a huge
Hmm.
risk, but I had a full book of clients booked out before I opened that space. Like I had been, seeing people moonlighting from my traditional rehab job. So I knew that people were going to be there. I wasn't going to build it and hope that they come. I had people
Hmm.
ready. I just needed a space, but it really was a risk. And as I went further into it and, more years and more employees, I realized, oh my gosh, this is risky. There were nights that I was sweating like to make payroll, because different things and challenges as business owners and hitting the first recession that happened. And thankfully, I had downsizers. I like to say right sized my practice
Mm.
before COVID hit. And I did that out of a very personal discovery and also becoming a mom with a partner who travels for work. So, I mean,
Hmm.
it really was risky, but I learned how to balance that risk and meet that risk each year that I continued on in business. And I would consult with people and I learned a lot from failure. I mean, great
Mm.
teacher right there, right?
Hmm. Yep. Oh yeah. Yeah. And I, first of all, love the phrase right size instead of
Mhm.
downsize. That's a great reframe. I love that.
Mhm.
I very much related to what you were saying about, wait, I'm a risk taker because when I opened my business, people were telling that to me as well. And I literally have never been anybody that I thought of as being a risk taker of any kind. I was a rule follower. I was
Yes.
a show me the instruction manual, let me find the exact right path. And yet on the other side of my brain, I was like a twisty curly Q, like doing things, in a random way because I didn't know I had ADHD until I turned 39. I got diagnosed, very, later in my life, and it has explained so much.
Sure.
But I completely relate to what you're saying because obviously like starting a business, running a business, like you're leaping without a net. You don't have all these things
Right.
figured out and solved, but you did have somewhat of a predetermined uh stream of clients that you knew would be there,
Yeah.
which I think made it, maybe made you feel a little more comfortable, which I think was definitely good. But
Absolutely, absolutely. And something you said, about you using the brain, like right and left brain. People love to say, "Oh, I'm right brain, creative, left brain, more linear." As a brain
mhm,
gym practitioner, really, we're at our best when we're integrating right and left. When we're under stress, is when we will like when I'm under stress, I make a ton of lists, a list about my list, and that's very left brain orderly. But when
mhm,
I'm at my best, I'm really in my creative flow and somewhat of an order. So I'm right and left brain. So that's something to note about entrepreneurs. And I can't remember the exact statistics, but so many entrepreneurs are living life beautifully, successfully with ADHD. And
mhm,
I think that we're wired. We need a lot of diversity. We need a lot of creative opportunities in our workspace and our workflow. And so, really, truly, when we can embrace that and also say, hey, if I'm feeling very left brain or very right brain, unintegrated, it means I'm under stress. What can I do to integrate my nervous system? I'm always going to bring it
Hmm.
back to that, but it's really beautiful when we realize that no, don't let someone put you in a box of being right or left brain. You are
Mm.
really right and left brain. And sometimes you'll pull more from one to the other because it's self-soothing in a way, if you will.
Hmm. I completely relate to that too, and I agree because I've been over the last couple years been trying to really um give myself more grace for sure, but really embrace the idea more of like living in the gray. Everything is not
Yes.
black or white. It's not one or the other. We are all both. Everything is both. Like two things can be true at the same time, as I learn in therapy all the time. And I
Yes.
think what you're saying about the sides of the brain is just like that as well. um, and so talking about like that brain body business connection that's in there, and you just started to touch on it, the stress, like the stress of wearing all the hats, we're doing it all, we're constantly running on fumes.
Mhm.
um, it affects our brains, it affects our nervous systems, obviously it affects our productivity, and I love what you talked about, peaceful productivity. I want to hear more
Mhm.
about that. But like, could you maybe talk a bit about what that stress actually is doing to us inside, to help us be more aware of maybe what's going on in there?
Sure, I'd love to. So that daily stress could be considered like a micro trauma. We
Mm,
think, oh, it's just I live in a high stress world, or my life is just super stressful at the stage I'm in right now. But it's a bit of a micro trauma because what happens is if we're living in stress, it's as if our body, our nervous system, I like to say our brain, body, and our heart space kind of views us as being chased by the saber-toothed tiger. Now, a really healthy, resilient nervous system should be able to be chased by the tiger. Usually it's not a tiger in modern world, but whatever huge stressor it is. But then let ourselves come back down, let ourselves downshift and upshift the nervous system so that we can be calmer. But a lot of us, what happens with that low grade or even mid high grade stress that just keeps going on and on and on every day of the week for months, years on end, is we're in that constant state of feeling like the saber-toothed tiger is there. And here's a few ways it can show up physically. Let's start with vision. So a lot of people who feel that their eyes will be very locked or stuck in the place of the periphery. Like they're not
mm,
watching where they're going forward because they're in that place of hypervigilance around the saber-toothed tiger. Or
mhm,
they're on their screens for too long without taking a nervous system break and their eyes locked forward in a two-dimensional way. And that's going to mess with their sleep wake cycle, for example. It's going to mess with the pineal gland. And then they're saying things like, I know I can't sleep well, I'm anxious, their appetite's changing, their words aren't flowing, different things start happening. They're everything that is typically pretty easy for them with their workflow can feel harder. It can feel
mm,
harder to focus, even if they're not dealing with the full-on diagnosis of neurodivergence. They can say, I just can't focus anymore. Like a lot of the women I work with, I can't read a book. I can't concentrate to read a book anymore. And
mhm,
so these are some signs and symptoms that can show up with stress. And what's happening is the body is saying, hey, that saber-toothed tiger is following me around all the time. So I'm just going to live in this place of fight, flight, freeze. There's also fawn, the people pleasing, which I know I used to
mm,
have a tendency towards that when I was younger. And I'm not there hardly ever, if at all, anymore, because I've learned to be empowered and take
mhm,
agency. But the whole idea is that the body starts to believe that fight, flight, freeze is the only way to get through in life. And then they get exhausted, their adrenals are tapped out. They go to a place where maybe their body shows up with something like chronic fatigue or
mhm,
fibromyalgia. There's a very much a nervous system component to those diagnoses or those situations. So, and there's also the whole statement, and I'm trying to remember who said this to give credit. The woman, I believe it was a woman that said, our issues are in our tissues. If you keep pushing through that stress, that shoulder's going to get crankier, that low back issue is going to show up. The organs
Mm-hmm.
aren't going to function as well. You might deal with IBS or diarrhea or anything in between. So it's going to manifest somewhere until it talks so loudly that you have to do something about it. And I always say,
Mm-hmm.
why don't we get to it beforehand? Like, the simple way I tell people what I do is I have the joy. It's a joy and an absolute honor and privilege to help people move out of fight, flight, freeze via nervous system regulation to optimize the health of their brain, body, and gut. Simple. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
that's what I do all day, every day. Someone might come in with a shoulder issue initially, but we're finding that when they revisit movement of a functional nature, they are having so much anxiety around it. We've got to work with that nervous system piece.
Mm-hmm.
So I hope that
I
answered your question.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And even I had some other things I was going to ask that you just answered. So that was great. It was like a 3 for 1. I was going to ask, what are some signs we could look for? How does that actually manifest? Because something that I definitely have found as a business owner now, my business has been around for 8 years now,
That's great.
is thank you, is the like just like what you were saying, that the feelings we have do turn into sometimes actual physical ailments, or they manifest in
Yeah.
aches and pains, or other conditions or whatever. They manifest in, sorry, I'm going to say it, nervous poops or whatever.
Yes. No, please say it. I am here for it. I talk about poop all the
Yeah.
time. And I
Yep.
cannot tell you how many women will say to me, when I'm stressed or nervous, I poop. And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
yes, you have to go. It's your nervous system is saying, well, I got to move that out so I can be
Mm-hmm.
ready to run forward.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And, it's funny because sometimes people refer to me as the poop whisperer because people are feeling like, hey, I'm having this issue. And I read my audience, like who's my audience? I meet them where they're at. If they're a prepper Southern lady, we're going to talk about elevating elimination. If there's
Mm.
someone who I can tell is a little bit more ready to be playful, I'll say, how's the pooping going? And some people will say it's great. And I'm like, what's great? Oh, I go
Mm-hmm.
regularly. What's regularly? 2 to 3 times a week? No, that's not great. We need that daily.
Mm-hmm.
Or the other person who's like, I'm afraid to leave the house because of that. And you're absolutely right. The physical manifestation will often be what stops someone in their tracks and say, I need to start on a healing path. But sadly, a lot of people won't find the nervous system component of that healing path until they're further down the road. Except I will say, nervous system regulation is becoming more of a household phrase. And I am so
Mm-hmm.
happy to hear. I'm so here for it because we
Yeah.
need to talk about it more. We need to support people. And I don't want to nerd out on it too much and bore people, but that vagus nerve, which is very popular these days, and it is a part of nervous system regulation. It's not the be all end all, but this is going
Mm-hmm.
to help people understand how nervous system regulation is tied to gut health. That's a cranial nerve that starts up in the brain area, comes all the way down. It's called the wandering nerve. It crosses over where your esophagus and your stomach comes together, and then it goes all the way down and attaches at the pubic bone. And so that nerve is a really direct connection to nervous system regulation and gut health. You got someone
Mm-hmm.
who's got a nervous stomach or has to poop because they're stressed out. There's going to be components of the nervous system that need to be supported and nurtured so that they're not always feeling that sort of reactive. They can become more proactive and make sure digestion finds a state of peaceful productivity as well.
That's true. Even that needs it. And it's funny when you were talking about, like, oh, no, my audience or whatever, how I should phrase this. I have a poop right here.
Oh, I love it. I have a couple of poop squishy emojis. I have a stuffed, yours is awesome, rainbow colorful. I
Yeah,
have
rainbow
Colette the
emoji poop.
colon, a stuffed colon that I have. I also have
Mm-hmm.
embarrassment from Inside Out too, because and I'll say,
Mm.
we've got embarrassment here. So if that's an emotion you're bringing, it's right here. And to
Mm-hmm.
the point you were saying about the emotions, that's the thing. Like people don't realize that the liver is where anger is held. They don't
Hmm.
realize that the lungs are about grief. They don't realize that parts of the intestines are about complaining. A certain area, junction of the intestines, are about complaints, whether it's complaints we have that aren't being honored or recognized, or complaints people bring to us or criticisms.
Mm-hmm.
And so I really feel a big part of my mission is to help people feel that A, we need to emote, and B, we need to move through the emotions and find spaces that will be held for us to emote. Because I was brought up in an era where you don't emote, stop that crying or I'll give you something to cry about, right? And that
Mm-hmm.
is
Mm-hmm.
something that we need to hold space for people to cry and to emote. And I have a
Yeah.
14-year-old daughter, and we're all about the emotions. And last summer I was reading a book and I was crying so hard at the end of the book. And it was kind of late. And my daughter, found me wherever I was reading. And she's like, "Oh, it's okay." And she's like, "Books make us feel big things. Let those emotions out." And I had such a proud mama moment. I was like, okay, it's sinking in when I tell her, allow those emotions to bubble up. And
Yeah.
we need to move through them. Yes, we want to recognize them, but none of us were taught how to process emotions. And that's why I have a segment of my work called Emotions in Motion, 10 minutes of moving, because certain movements, like same-sided movement, helps us
Mm-hmm.
feel the big feelings and even some of the trauma, old trauma, more recent trauma. And then cross body movements help us to process and move to a place of wholeness. So we're not stuck in that one-sided, one side of the brain being primary in that moment of stress, and we can move to a place of wholeness and peaceful productivity. But you got to
Mm-hmm.
move through those emotions, acknowledge them, feel them, and allow your nervous system, your brain, your body, your heart space to process them, right?
Mm-hmm. And that brings me to another thing I was going to ask about, and I think this is what you're talking about here. I saw on your site that you say working out changes bodies, but working in transforms lives. And I
Yes.
thought that was a very interesting statement. So I would love to know, what do you mean by that, and how can we start working in instead of just like burning out?
Yes. Thank you so much for asking. And it also speaks to people's history. A lot of people have negative experiences with workouts, whether it was that gym class that felt demeaning, or like I was always the last kid kicked for kickball in elementary gym, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so, we all have sort of our story around that. So, how can we make movement fun and playful? But when we work out, sometimes it's just for a certain goal. We want to get ready for that trip, and there's maybe an external and aesthetic goal, and that's only going to last for so long. But when we bring the internal goal of feeling good, less anxiety, feeling stronger, more functional, being able to keep up with our kids or our grandkids, or go kayaking, like this woman I serve who's had 3 spinal surgeries and wanted to go kayaking, and she sends me pictures of herself kayaking. I love it.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm so inspired by her. The way that I create work-ins is we always start with a bit of nervous system regulation. So what that means is we'll pace ourselves, which is a tool through Brain Gym that integrates the right and left side of the brain and the body so that we're positive, active, clear, and energized. And then we'll move through certain developmental movements, perhaps move through the Moro reflex that helps us actually access breath from a place of ease. So we're not feeding into that fight, flight, freeze with our breath already being up here. It helps us drop into deep breath. Maybe we'll move through some spinal movements so that when we get on the floor and do Pilates-esque type movements, our spine is ready for it. And then our
Mm-hmm.
nervous system's integrated. And then a lot of times we'll use the small ball as a prop for proprioception, that's feeling, that getting that little bit of compression that feels just right for the joints, the nervous system, the myofascial system, so that it's more of getting back in our body, developing our felt sense. And then as we're moving, we might be saying, oh, let's do this movement at the same time for your gut so it can feel a little more ease. And so it's approaching that movement experience from a much deeper level, and it keeps people coming back. And
Mm-hmm.
people will say, I'm much more committed to doing that because I'm not just pushing through and sweating. I'm actually feeling good. I'm actually feeling calmer, grounded, centered, and empowered. And I always say to them, you don't need an hour. You can take 2 to 3 minutes to do your nervous system regulation before you start your day. Or let's say they love yoga or they love hiking, whatever their movement practice is that speaks to them. Do some of this simple nervous system regulation from a developmental perspective. Again, that's my approach to nervous system
Mm-hmm.
regulation before you begin any movement practice. I work with a guy who's a very high level tennis player. And so I always encourage him to do a little bit before and a little bit after. And a lot of our activities, especially our athletes who are into traditional kind of sports, it's a mental game, right? Like
Yeah.
golfers, I don't personally golf, but I worked with many, and it's a mental game. And so they'll do some of these nervous system exercises before, and they're like, oh my gosh, I'm so much sharper. My game is so much different because they're integrating the right left side of their brain and their body and their nervous system. So I think that was kind of a long-winded answer, but working then truly does transform lives because you feel that, oh, even though I didn't want to go out in the gray Midwestern weather, I did a little bit of regulation first, and then I went to walk Snoopy, Then I went
Hmm.
out and
Hmm.
did my little bit of time in nature and went for a walk, even if it was only 10 minutes. Doesn't
Hmm.
matter. It's nourishing your nervous system.
Hmm. And I know, too, which I'm going to put in the show notes, you also have a freebie about nervous system relief for stress and anxiety. Could you tell us a little bit
Yes.
about that freebie and what's included there?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. Thank you. So I came up with inner peace, nervous system relief for stress and anxiety because, again, nervous system regulation is so much more available and talked about. But really, what do people need? What are they struggling with? That's always me going, what do people need right now? What are people
Yeah.
struggling with? And stress and anxiety, right? And
Hmm.
so this freebie is 3 short videos, 3 minutes or less. Now, this one is really full of hands-on self-soothing because
Okay.
I wanted people to be able to start at their office, in their car. I do this thing, mom in a minivan, because I do a lot of Uber momming. I'm
I
going to
want to
be
ask you
waiting.
about that.
Yeah, sure. I will be waiting for my daughter, and so I've got a few minutes to catch my breath. Well, let me do a few things that are hands-on that don't require that I move in my car so much. And so there's tools like that in the Inner Peace program. And really what I love to say is, yes, I have all the big Pilates apparatus, which is great, and I'm grateful for
Hmm.
that. But really to get yourself to that organized from the inside out, calm, focused place, everything you need is within you. I actually have a program called Within, which is
Mm.
all about tapping into the tools that you have within you to help you find the ease, to help you find the calm, to help you feel at home in your body and your mind.
Mm.
So it's definitely so easy and simple for people to access.
Awesome. That's going to be really helpful. So make sure those of you who are listening to check out the show notes where you can grab that freebie that Kelly was so kind to share. So thank you for that.
Oh, my
Um,
pleasure.
and talking what you were saying or talking about what you were saying before too about that peaceful productivity. What would you say are maybe some like brain friendly ways to actually get more done as a business owner without like forcing ourselves into that constant hustle mode that we were talking about earlier? Because I really struggle with that.
Oh, yeah.
I try to like I don't love the word hustle. I use it, to
Mhm.
describe certain
Mhm.
things, but I'm trying to break up with that, because
Yes. Yes.
it never fit the way I fully am. Like I
Mhm.
want to achieve, I want to be productive, I want to be successful and all of that, but we also are human beings who need rest. We need
Right.
breaks. We need
Right.
creativity and joy and all of that kind of thing. So yeah, I would love to know your thoughts on that.
Yeah, sure. And I've noticed this on a lot of your work, listening to your podcasts and reading what you share on Instagram. I love the way you reframe things. I'm a big reframer.
Oh,
And
thank you.
like you,
Hmm.
I used to live in hustle culture. And now if I'm going to hustle, it better be at a wedding doing some fun dancing, right? That's the way I want to
Yes.
hustle. But I still want to be a high achiever, right? I
Right,
I used
right.
to be an overachiever, and I really have worked towards being a high achiever. I love achieving. Really what I love is sharing the work I love. And that looks a
Hmm.
lot like achievement. And so, yeah, I can cross a lot off the to-do list, but how do we do that without burning out? Because if you're going to be an entrepreneur, there is a chance at some point you'll burn out. Some really simple things, because I think a lot of your audience is in a virtual business realm, or even if
A
they have
lot
a,
are, yeah. Hmm.
yeah, even if they have a product, they have to be on that computer a lot. So,
Yes.
super simple thing to do is push away from your computer. If you can, step outside. If you're a few steps away from a door, if not, look out a window. And if you don't have a window, find somewhere to look where there's three dimensional. And then look as far away out the window as you can, like the furthest tree or building that you can find, and then look
Mm-hmm.
at something closer. So let's work on that convergence divergence. That's going to break
Hmm.
that eye lock that happens with being on the screen, for example. And, or you could even just take your eyes side to side, scanning, looking away from the screen, because again, that is so important for our nervous system. And you look at when someone is under major trauma, has had trauma, immediate trauma, you're going to see that they don't blink, their eyes aren't moving, or maybe they're blinking rapidly. There's different ways
Mm-hmm.
it can show up. So we need to constantly nourish our eyes as a portal to the nervous system with daily eye exercises.
Hmm.
Then, I mean, we had talked before we started about maybe showing something. So I'd love to
Yeah.
show a simple exercise that people could do every day is sort of like, I think of it like brushing my teeth. I do it in the morning when I brush my teeth, and I often do it in the afternoon after lunch so that I have just as much energy to serve my afternoon people as I do in the
Mm-hmm.
morning. And I do it in times of transition when I take my hat off from being a practitioner and a business owner to being an Uber mom. I will do this as well. So this is a 4-step process, and it's
Okay.
from Brain Gym. And I'm going to show it seated, but I'll talk through it
Okay.
for those that are listening on Spotify. So the first thing we do, and this is the PACE sequence, PACE from Brain Gym specifically to give credit there.
Okay.
So we start with a
Mm-hmm.
sip of water. So I always say cheers.
Okay. I'm gonna do it too.
Please, yeah, let's do it together. And doing it together, you get that co-regulation, which is really fantastic. And then one hand on the belly button, the other hand makes a C. And you're
Okay.
going to take your thumb and first finger and put them where your collarbone and breastbone intersect. Now, this is
Okay.
brain gym, not brain surgery. So if you're a little off to the side, it's not going to matter. And
Okay.
so we're just gently rubbing that area. The other hand is on the belly button. I just want to give recognition and acknowledgement to the idea that we're in the midline of the body right now. The midline is a safe space. This is where we can come back to when we're feeling overwhelmed. And let's switch to
Mm-hmm.
the other side so that we get both sides. So the other hand comes up, thumb and first finger to the breastbone collarbone intersection. The other hand is at the belly button.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you can stay seated for this next part. I'm just going to stand up with the intention of making a visual, and we'll
Okay.
see how this works out. So what
Okay.
we're going to do now is called a cross crawl. I'm going to lift my opposite leg and touch it with my opposite hand. So seated,
Mm-hmm.
this would be really easy too. I'm just going to reach across and bring one hand to the opposite side. Now, this is that
Mm-hmm.
cross body movement that's so integrated. And this is so important. Now, there's tons of variations that I teach about this particular cross crawl movement. Now, the
Mm-hmm.
last piece of this 4-step process, and I'll summarize it here in a moment, you're going to
Mm-hmm.
cross your ankles, and you could do
Okay.
this standing, you could do this lying down. We're doing it seated right now, and that's going to, resonate probably with a lot of entrepreneurs because they can just push back from their computer and take your arms in front like you're going to clap but miss. And then if you
Okay.
can, turn your palms to face each other, interlace your fingers, and then bend your arms. There we are, back at the midline again. Now, if you
Hmm.
can, place your tongue on the roof of your mouth.
Mm-hmm.
And if your wrists and forearms and shoulders aren't happy with this kind of pretzel-y version, just uncross, or excuse me, cross at the forearms and have your hands touch the opposite shoulders. And again,
Mm-hmm.
staying here, breathing. This is really nice to do lying down because it just gets you out of gravity's way. It makes sure you're not looking at that screen. And it takes us back to earliest development, which to work through some of our stress, our emotions, and our trauma, we got to go back to those early developmental movements. And then
Mm-hmm.
after a few breaths here, uncross your legs, uncross your hands, bring them to the midline. So
Mm-hmm.
that's phase 2 of step 4. So just to summarize, the pace is a
Hmm.
sip of water, the brain
Mm-hmm.
buttons, which is working with kidney 27 acupressure point. It's great for screen fatigue. It's great for overall fatigue to boost energy and concentration and focus. The cross crawl, that cross body movement, oh my goodness. And you can pull any of these out as a separate. You don't always have to do them in order, but to give you
Okay.
kind of a nice little package for entrepreneurs, if you're going to start a new project, if you're task switching, do this before you task switch so that you can have your brain and your body ready and primed and energized in a good way. But the cross crawl movement, I always joke, that's the one where we crossed opposite hand to leg. You can never
Mhm.
OD on that. We need so much cross crawl. And when you don't know what to do, just cross crawl. And then the last
Mhm.
piece was the crossing over the hookup,
Mhm.
very calming. Now, the only time I wouldn't do the full sequence is right before bed because it can boost your energy. But you
Mm.
could take the hookup right before bed and even lie in bed. Like if I get up to go to the bathroom and I have a little moment of like, oh, geez, I hope I can go back to sleep, I'll go into a hookup, which makes sure I don't get into that looping about crap, I'm not going to be able to go back to sleep, you know. So
Mhm.
there's really, it's a 4-step process, but you can pull each of those out. And again, I would do that any time of transition, any task switching, the start of your day. I have everyone do it at the start of their session before we start a therapeutic session, whether they're on my table for hands-on or we're doing movement-based work, or if I'm teaching workshops, or when I had a team that I was managing at the beginning of every team meeting, we would do this so that we were
Mhm.
all coming from a place of grounded clarity and energy.
That was so awesome. I'm so excited because when you were talking, well, first of all, it was easy to do. It felt good. It was like a good stretch. Like I'm terrible about stretching just in general. So even doing those movements was like a good stretch for me.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Sure.
but also like what you were talking about task switching. That is something that is so hard for me and for other ADHDers.
Oh
Like
yeah.
when you're in the zone and
Yes.
you're focused on a thing and you're like tunnel vision and I'm like, yes, I'm doing it. I am so awesome.
Mhm.
And then life's, and something needs
Yes.
your attention over here or you have to put out a fire or something. And it's like devastating.
Oh
Number
yeah.
one. And number two, you can't focus. You don't know where you like you lose your place. You don't know how to like get into the zone. And
Right.
I think especially for folks who are service-based entrepreneurs, like I was originally, I still am, but like now I have a mix of other things too. But you're task switching from client to client. They
Mhm.
have different needs, they have different brands, they have different vibes, they have different communication styles. Even that is task switching. So
Right.
I really
Absolutely.
appreciate you leading us through that exercise. And folks who are listening on Spotify or any of the other audio platforms, make sure you check out this on YouTube so that you can see the physical demonstration that Kelly just led us through. But that is so helpful. Also, about what you were saying with how to help with the separation of the devices on the screens that we are absorbed with
Mhm.
all day.
Yep.
Um, it was eye-opening to me that what did you call it about like the depth perception or breaking up the
Yeah. The
distance? What is that called?
convergence. Yeah. Convergence and divergence of the eyes.
That
Really
was it.
important. Yeah. And then I
Yeah.
also want to acknowledge the what you're talking about getting focused, like tunnel vision.
Yeah.
That's hyper focus. And
Mm-hmm.
that's the way a lot of us, because women show up differently with ADHD, and as young girls, we mask it. And
Yeah.
hyper
Oh yeah.
focus is my biggest challenge. Like I can start writing because I love it so much. I can write for 6 hours and forget to eat, or oh yeah, I gotta let the
Right.
dog out. And so
Yep.
that whole hyper focus piece, and it doesn't necessarily mean that someone has ADHD, but when we're hyper focused, we're in a dysregulated nervous system state. And we think, oh, but
Hmm.
that's where I'm productive. And that can be very depleting. So, and I'm always like, well, I could never do what's recommended in typical literature of taking a break every 30, 45 minutes, because then I have a hard time getting back into it. So
Mm-hmm.
I have to like time block and say, okay, I get to work on this for 2 hours and I have to do this, or, switch. So you kind of have to really learn. I like to say, learn how you're wired, because
Mm-hmm.
if you're wired for that hyper focus, then how can we work with that so it's not depleting, and how can we use it as a strength, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we just have to kind of think of how we're doing that. And one way I do that is to make sure, okay, even if I'm hyper focusing on something, every 45 to 60 minutes, I can't do shorter than that because it feels too broken up. Sometimes it's every 90 minutes, I stop and do pace again. Or
Mm.
maybe I move through one of the survival reflex movements so that I make sure that I don't get myself into that like stressed out hyper focus. Because
Yeah.
I lived a lot of my life. That's how I got through grad school, was stressed out, hyper focused, and it wasn't
Yeah.
productive.
Yep. Yeah, I relate to that super hardcore.
Yes, yes.
It is tough, but that's another reason why I've enjoyed doing this podcast so much too, because I'm learning. I myself am learning, as I'm chatting with experts like you and others, to pick up on these little like things that pop up in our life, in our daily, day to day as a business owner, like, I'm really struggling with this random thing, or wow, that's weird. Why am I feeling that way about that thing? Like, what can I learn about that? How can I help that? And I know, like you were just saying earlier, that brain, you're sharing that brain, body, and biome are all connected.
Yes.
And so thinking about like gut health and energy for entrepreneurs, like I know I struggle with those energy crashes,
Hmm.
like very often. And I'm sure, like you were just saying, oh, I forgot to eat lunch. That happens to me all the time.
Hmm.
I forget to eat breakfast, I forget to eat lunch, and then it's like I'll just eat something quick, something that's obviously terrible for me. Um, so, what would you say are maybe some tiny tweaks that we can do with our daily routines when our routine includes, oh, I forgot to eat. I make bad decisions then after that, or you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah. Yeah, I love that question. So the first thing I would say is don't change what you're eating. Bad
hmm,
decisions, actually you nourished yourself. And maybe it wasn't something that resonates with your highest health and good right now, but I would say let's first approach the nervous system piece of it because I know sometimes I have to eat on the fly in my car, it's quick,
right.
and I really that's not supportive of digestion. Now, sometimes I still do that, but I'll try to make it like a protein shake or a smoothie that I can sip without feeling, because I have this whole thing in some of the programs I teach and gutsy brain movement and whatnot, which is actually my membership, but we talk about this a lot. Is the saber-toothed tiger sitting down at the dinner table? So I don't care. I mean, I do care, but no matter what you're eating, you said, you make something that's maybe not the most nourishing choice in that moment or feeling like the healthiest. Eat whatever that is, but eat it from a state of calm. So
Hmm.
here's the thing. Can you push away? I'm famous for eating at my desk, reading emails, checking in on things. But what I
Yep.
really try to do is go sit somewhere else where I can look out a window. And when the weather's nice here, I'll actually sit outside. And you could even do pace before you eat. You could,
Hmm.
do one thing from pace, like sit in a hookup. You could sit in that hookup and just kind of bring yourself back to the midline. And you can do things like any of these nervous system exercises just to bring yourself into that place. Make sure your feet are on the ground. Make sure that you are actually chewing your food. That's a great nervous system exercise because we get so hurried. And I know I've lived a lot of my life there where I was probably not chewing it barely at all. But
Hmm.
we want to get to that place where I'm going to chew my food, feel the ground underneath me. What is the sensation of that food? What's the texture? Whether it's
Hmm.
the junk food that, we're judging ourselves about, or if it's something, if you're going to have the junk food, own it. We got to have
Hmm.
some fun with our food sometimes and then really notice later, how did it make you feel? And I go, oh, I
Hmm.
didn't feel energized by that. Okay. So how can I get something that's a little bit more supportive of my health? And
Hmm.
make it nourishing, starting with I have all these meditations that we do in my community before you eat so that you feel grounded, so that you feel calm. The main thing is, and can I teach another exercise, Alicia, with that?
Yes,
Okay.
please. Yes.
So a lot of us are eating from stress and anxiety. So one of my favorite tools to have people do before they eat is called the fear paralysis reflex exercise. So
Hmm.
fear paralysis, it's tied to so much. It's one of those survival reflexes. We need it, but we don't want it in the forefront. So just a little side note, when I talk about reflexes, because we had childhoods where we played outside and we weren't stuck on screens, we moved through these, we integrated them, they moved to the background as they should. Now, today's kids are having more challenges with that, but topic for another time. So what we want to do is keep those in the background for only emergency situations. But because life stress, or I love how you say life is lifing. I may have gotten that wrong, but I love how you say that
That was
life
it.
happened, right?
Yeah, life
So
lifing.
yeah. So the stress, the trauma, the illness, the car accident, those reflexes come to the foreground. And then we're going to keep bumping into anxiety. So here's a really simple thing you can do before you
Mm-hmm.
eat. I'm just going to give you the very brief version. Put one hand over your breastbone, put the other
Mm-hmm.
hand on top. And now
Okay.
we're going to do a rhythm. You don't have to be a musician or a dancer for this. I'll talk you through it, but it's going to be a 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. What I did just there is took my top hand and gently tapped that cha-cha rhythm onto my bottom
Mm-hmm.
hand. And then
Mm-hmm.
just take a deep breath in and out. I really encourage and remind people about the deep breath, because if you forget that, you're going to tap super fast right through it, and your nervous
Mm-hmm.
system isn't going to realize that you actually are giving it some nourishment before you actually eat the nourishment. And then let's do it again. We'll do 3 total. So it's a one,
Okay.
2, 1, 2, 3. Pause, deep breath. I just caught myself with my feet lifted, reminded myself to put my feet down. I want to be grounded for this. And then
Mm-hmm.
one more time. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. Pause, deep breath. So that
Hmm.
is not just for pre-eating, but because a lot of us are eating on the fly, we're stressed out, we're anxious, our mind is running in 1,000 directions, we're not present. Doing that gentle tapping before you eat, and that might feel a little more accessible than the 4-step pace, because you got to remember it, you got to look the video, so, and that
Mm-hmm.
actually, that fear paralysis is in my inner peace freebie, so you
Mm-hmm.
can
Okay.
find it there, but it just brings you to the present moment. It uninvites the saber-toothed tiger from your meal, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so then you
Mm-hmm.
might find, if you do that as a practice, you're going to feel a little calmer as you're eating, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I have a ton of practices with that whole idea of eating. The first thing is stop shooting all over ourselves, right? Because we'll go,
Oh
oh, I
yeah.
should have eaten this. Oh, I should have eaten slower. Well, you're going to shoot all over yourself, right? So
Yep.
I like to say, if you find that you just ate quickly, go, how would you talk to a young child? Oh my gosh, sweetie, you must have felt really rushed. How can we help you feel more spaciousness around your nourishment and self-care? And so kind of dialogue with yourself like that, and moving through nervous system tools. And before long, you'll start to crave the self-care that eating can actually be, right?
Mm-hmm.
Hard to fit in
Mm-hmm.
self-care, but you got to eat every day. So how can we make that a bit of nourishment for our
Hmm.
nervous system, our brain, our body, our gut, our biome, right?
I love that. That is a very accessible way to explain it. Actionable thing that people can try right now. I felt calmer literally just doing it. And I'm wondering, and correct me if I'm wrong, but some of these like physical things that you've taught us today, and also the just verbal advice and tips and stuff, a lot of them seem to involve some sort of pattern disruptor. And would I be right in that?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Because what we're doing is we're disrupting the pattern of anxiety. We're disrupting with, for example, with the fear paralysis tapping. And there's
Mm-hmm.
a full sequence that goes all the way down to the feet with that. But I wanted to keep it brief and accessible. Like
Sure.
you said, I believe in keeping it accessible. The longer version can come at another time. But
Mm-hmm.
the pattern with pace that we're breaking is a pattern of not being present, not being
Mm-hmm.
fully present and in our
Yep.
body, so we're definitely breaking patterns, and we're also breaking a pattern. Again, I approach nervous system from development, reflexes, brain body movement, through movement. And what happens is when those particular reflexes get tripped up, triggered, they're in the foreground instead of the background for the real emergency when we need them. Those are patterns. Like, people will say, oh my gosh, I keep finding sort of a self-sabotage, or the person that keeps injuring the same ankle over and over, and they think it's structural. And I'm like, well, it's partly structure, but it's also your nervous system patterns of movement. You see, the way
Yeah.
we develop cognition in life, the way we develop our brain in life early on, is through movement. It's not through being little babies and toddlers and doing crossword puzzles, right? We move
Right.
through our space. We figure out how to navigate first on our, back, our stomach, hopefully a lot of time on the stomach. We're rolling to the side. We're coming to seated. We're navigating, pulling ourselves up. That is laying the scaffolding for our brain and our nervous system. So, one of the things I see in people as they age and their cognition is shifting, and I saw this in my dad with Alzheimer's, he had stopped
Mm-hmm.
moving a lot. He he thought he couldn't move. And I noticed
Mm.
especially his rotation was lost in his trunk body. And I really feel that was part, and there were other factors, of course, but we need to move to keep our brain healthy. We need to
Hmm.
move. We need to be in nature. There's a nature deficit. Just one of the quickest things that people could do is get out and go for a 3-minute walk. Or like I was nerding out on this in this course yesterday on neuroplasticity, and we were
Mm.
seated in a hotel ballroom all day. Well, there was a whole area of the ballroom where there were no seats, and during our breaks, I was walking laps, and then I went outside and walked laps when the sun came out because we are not meant to sit all day, right?
Hmm.
So just getting some gentle movement is huge for our brain and our body.
I love that so much. And you're definitely speaking to my core right now because this is something that I'm challenging myself with this year, is
Mm.
and here I am, I'm putting it on the podcast, so I'm holding myself accountable, of being an active participant in my health.
Mm.
And, but at the same time, doing it in realistic, manageable ways. And what you just
Mm.
said about being present, number one, which I want to go on a side tangent about in a second, but a 3-minute walk, yes, I can do a 3-minute walk. I can do
Mm-hmm.
that.
Yes.
And I can, get up and take breaks. I can, because I do like I'm at my computer basically all day. Maybe I
Mm.
switch to the laptop and go sit in the living room or, go to Starbucks or whatever, but like I'm in front of my computer all day because that's where I do my work.
Right.
Um, and so I want to be more conscious about stretching, about taking those breaks,
Mm-hmm.
about getting fresh air and
Mm-hmm.
sunshine and seeing nature. And I
Mm-hmm.
think, to touch on what you were saying about being present, that's definitely something that I'm becoming more aware of,
Mm-hmm.
um, that I need to do a better job of that as well, or I want to do a better job of that as
Yeah.
well, because like what you were saying about, okay, we're having our breakfast or our lunch, we're not doing it in front of the computer, we're going to go sit by the window, we're going to go sit somewhere that's not in front of a screen or a device. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's like a way to protect the specialness of that moment or to protect
Right.
the self-care of that nourishing moment.
Right.
And it lets you be present to uh, take that conscious decision to do that, to take the time
Right.
to do that for yourself. And I know that like I don't have that muscle flex yet, because I go and I make a sandwich and I sit here at my desk and I keep going.
Yes.
Um,
Well,
so I
and it's a
love everything that you said
practice.
about that. It is a practice,
It's a
yes.
practice. And
Mm-hmm.
I'll tell you, there are times when I will also come sit in front of my screen. But I know because I have a teenage daughter and a husband who travels, I am really all about like at the beginning, my husband would have loved to sit in front of the TV and eat dinner. I'm like, we are sitting as a family. We're taking this time to connect. We're nourishing ourselves not only with food, but with connection. And we have a lot of discussions with our teenage daughter about current events and what's going on in the world. And then we had a French exchange student for a year and getting her, like our dinners would stretch on nights that we could. A lot of times we had commitments and whatnot, but
Mm-hmm.
it became this opportunity to connect. And sometimes it's just connecting with ourselves because I don't have people to eat lunch with except for Snoopy, and he's going to try to eat my lunch. But it might be me connecting with the birds, going outside and looking, is
Yeah,
that bird back today? Is that bird here? Or it might be, finding that, okay, I'm going to find a way to eat a meal with someone that I care about in a way that feels nourishing, not only food wise, but the connection. And
yeah,
was trying to say too, it's a practice. I love that you put this out there. Now we can all support you. And remember, it gets to ebb and flow. Like you
right.
might think it's going to look one way, but you're learning new tools today that you'll add to it. And then things will bubble up and you can always pop in and ask me a question if you like. And what
Oh, thank
about,
you.
this for nervous system regulation, or I'm feeling this. And really, I tell people it's not about the end result, it's about the process. Like when we were
Yeah.
looking for a preschool for my daughter, it was so hard to find a preschool that wasn't pushing early reading and all of this, which is wrong developmentally. And I wanted to find process based. And one of my questions was like, tell me about your art. Is it process based or outcome based? And if they said, oh, we want these kids to be little mini Picassos, I'm like, we're out. And that's what I tell the people that I serve, and this took some unlearning for me coming from a dance background where movement was often performative with expectations. And I say to people, what if we could just move because it feels good? And if that
Mm,
doesn't feel good today, let's find another way to move. And
yeah.
sometimes we move in the same sided movement, the one that is where the trauma and the big emotions live, it feels good because we haven't given any space or time for that. And then, yes,
Hmm.
we always want to end with a cross body movement, but every day is going to be different. Some days I'm laying on the floor doing snow angel type movements. Again, that's where some of the trauma and the big emotions live and the stress. And I'm doing tons of snow angels because, oh my gosh, I guess I haven't really processed what happened in these last few weeks. And then, of course, I'll end with a cross body movement. But I guess my wish for you is to make it enjoyable, be
Yeah.
curious, stay curious about it, and it can ebb and flow. And, you
Hmm.
know, be careful not to set expectations or let other people's expectations creep in there. Make it what you want,
Hmm.
what's right for you.
I appreciate that very much because I've spoken about this on some past episodes that I, not just health related, but anything business related, life related, whatever, I really struggle with putting a lot of weight on the end result and the expectation of the end result, how something's going to go, and is it going to be successful or not? What does that look like? Oh, it was a failure, it was a flop, or oh, that didn't go how I thought it was, or that didn't go perfectly, or that sucks, I'm
Mhm.
not going to try that again. Like, what
Mhm.
was I thinking? All that kind of stuff. And what it's like I know the way that I approach that is not right for how I want, it to be.
Mhm.
But at the same time, I do struggle with how to approach it, in that right way. So
Mhm.
it's just a good reminder to,
Yeah.
try to not put those expectations, whether myself or anybody else's, onto the end result, because the important part is the process, like you were saying,
Right.
like the practice you said.
Yeah,
So I
but also
really
the
appreciate
process
that.
too. The process
Hmm.
too, and the practice. And, I think one of the best gifts I've given myself in the last 15-ish years is lowering my expectations of
Oh
myself
yeah.
and others because,
Yep.
you know, I was showing up a certain way for people and I was hopeful that they would too, but then I realized maybe they didn't have the capacity at that stage of
Hmm.
whatever they were moving through. And I think just lowering my expectations, even on a simple everyday, how much am I going to get done? Well, no, you know what? Let's be realistic. And so I think lowering my expectations, and then if I, can meet certain expectations and go above, it's sort of a bonus.
It's a
But I'm
bonus,
not, yeah,
exactly.
I'm not
Hmm.
putting that pressure on myself. And I think we as women and people that, identify on the more feminine side, we need to give one another permission for that. We need to give permission for rest. I heard you say that a while ago too. And it took me years to learn how to give myself rest
Hmm.
and to take the time to actually feel if something's coming up, a healing process. And really, it's hard too, because as entrepreneurs, feast or famine, we got to pay the bills, right? But
Yep.
allowing ourselves little moments of rest and saying that project will be there. It'll be there when we're ready and we have the energy and capacity for it. I mean, I
Yep.
think that's the thing I'm really seeing from so many people I serve, especially women, the capacity, the bandwidth gets overstretched. And let's give one another and ourselves permission. A big part of some of the movement practices we do are about going deep in the nervous system to give ourselves permission to do whatever we want to do, whether it's more or less or be. I was just with a group of women and one woman was beautifully sharing about how she felt like she never could be herself because she was told she was too loud and too out there, and we're like, bring it, we're here for it.
Hmm.
And so permission to be ourselves, permission to evolve as ourselves, right? Because if you knew me 20 years ago, I was a very different person than now. So can we hold space for that person to be the most evolved version of themselves?
Hmm. I love that. That's so helpful to hear. And it's so true. Um, and so shifting gears a little bit as we're
Sure.
heading towards the end here, talking about creative entrepreneurship, folks who are creative entrepreneurs. What is kind of your take on creativity in business? Like, how does movement or nervous system work actually make us maybe more creative business owners? Because
Mm.
one of the things, and this is a separate kind of question, but I just want to put it out there. One of the things I loved on your social media is just your personality comes through and through. And you're just so vibrant and fun and funny. Like, yes, I saw your stuffed uterus, I think it was, right? Or your stuffed
I have
lungs or
that too.
esophagus.
Yeah, yeah. I've
And
got all this stuff.
I love that. And your mom in a minivan series, like you
Yes.
show up in a very relatable way, and it's clear that you're a very creative person as well. So how can all of that kind of work together for those of us who are
Yeah.
creative entrepreneurs?
Well, first of all, thank you for that kind feedback. I appreciate that, especially from you, having expertise in marketing and social media. That means a lot. So thank you. I
My
think,
pleasure.
and I think one thing personally I had to do was really stop taking myself so seriously and just be like, I'm going to put
Mm-hmm.
it out there. And if they don't like it, too bad they're not my people. Okay, that's all right.
Yep.
But the
Yep.
nervous system, and I also, a big part of it is the nervous system regulation. When you feel grounded, when you feel regulated, you can be more authentically yourself. And I think that's the thing when you don't have so much anxiety, when you don't feel like you're stuck in one-sidedness, or what we call the homolateral place, unintegrated, um, is another way to think of it, then you can be more creative. You can do that task switching. You can wear the hats. But, how do we do that? Again, I'm going to go back to doing your pace. If you're a business owner, again, I do my pace in the morning. Usually I work with
Mm-hmm.
real people in 3D in the morning. Sometimes I've got virtual groups I'm working with in the morning. I'm doing pace. Like before this time together, I did pace beforehand so I could be ready to be fully present and share with your amazing community. And so getting into a regular practice of nervous system regulation is going to help that energy stay more consistent. Now, I also love working with creatives on helping them drop into their creativity because again, we have blocks. And so we'll start with pace and then we'll go through a whole developmental sequence that helps us get to that deeper place, get those voices out of our mind and body that have been hanging out there, the stories we're telling ourselves, and get us to that place where we can allow the flow, the creative flow. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure if I'm answering your question as succinctly as you probably need, but the bottom line is
That's okay.
creatives, obviously, I love this stuff, but creatives, I think, really deserve and need a nervous system practice
Mm.
because that mind is always thinking and creating. And sometimes, like, we'll be laying in bed, and my husband's like, can you turn your brain off? Because he can feel me. He knows that I'm not sleeping, and the sparks are flying. And I have ways that I kind of empty that out first, but he's like, can you turn your brain off? I'm like, no, my brain is always like boom, boom, boom. It's like pinballs in there. And I've learned to live with that. It's fun. I have a lot of creative stuff coming through, but I really feel that creatives deserve an opportunity to feel nervous system support. And
Mm.
so starting with dialing down the anxiety, because sometimes excitement and anxiety live sidecar with each other, right?
Oh yeah.
And
Yep.
so, can we say, I can still be excited about this, but how can I find a way to be grounded about it? Because otherwise, I'm going to get snowballing about, well, I got to do this now. I got to figure this out. So,
Mm-hmm.
nervous system regulation, I think everyone should learn it when they're young, like brushing their teeth, but especially for creatives, because that takes a lot of energy physically and mentally and emotionally. And so having a nervous system practice, again, maybe 3 minutes in the morning, a minute after lunch, and I do kind of try to fit it all in, waiting in the car for my daughter. That might be when I get to do fear paralysis that day, just that
Mm-hmm.
short version doing, or maybe I'm going into a doctor's appointment or something that makes me a little anxiety ridden. So I'll do it before I walk in. So taking that moment before you go into any situation just to feel organized. Maybe it's just doing that hookup that we did as a standalone.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of think of that as almost like a security blanket or a stuffy that we loved growing up. And having that moment to just kind of be with ourselves and check in. because we're worth it. And you're not going to
Mm,
have the longevity as an entrepreneur or creative unless you keep nourishing and giving back to yourself.
I love it. That is such a good way to put it. And yeah, like that lock, what is it called? Lockup? Is that what you said? Lockup?
It's actually
Um,
called a hookup, but sometimes when
hookup,
I'm working
sorry.
with young people whose minds go elsewhere, I'll call it just hug your midline or,
Yeah.
so you can call it whatever you want. Just think of it coming to a safe space.
Yeah, well, I was gonna say the actual motion, it is very much like you were hugging a stuffed animal or hugging yourself. And so I like that the movement itself or the motion itself matches what it's trying to do. It makes it easier to remember. And also, again, like for those of you who, who have been listening to this great conversation who are like, I need more of this in my life. Kelly has shared a whole bunch of ways that you can incorporate this into your daily tasks, your daily routine in what I feel are very easy to do, accessible, not overwhelming, but very clear and intentional specific actions. And I'm really looking forward to starting to incorporate these. And thank you so much for breaking it down for us and making it easy for us because we do deserve it. We freaking deserve
Yeah,
it. Okay.
yeah. Well, and it's my pleasure. And I really think having to make it accessible and realistic for people. And then
Yeah.
if I can just share every week in my Facebook group,
Mm-hmm.
I go live and teach a tool every week, one little tool like this. And so people pop in and out, you watch the replay, they don't have to be there live, but I'm teaching tools like this so you can build your toolbox. And then you can also ask
Awesome.
questions. And I've got a list of things people need, like someone wanted tools for after being at the dentist or before the dentist because it was
Oh, that's a
anxiety
good one.
provoking. So I'm
Yeah.
going to share, it's on my list of topics to cover. So I'm going to share one simple tool. I always just share one at that, maybe
Mm-hmm.
two at the most, but I want it to be really accessible because again, all these tools are within and the pace sequence, if you want some variations of that, a few years ago when I was just starting to make videos, I came up with 28 days of pace doing it
Oh,
together,
wow.
slightly different versions. I brought in different people to help me. Like my daughter
Mm-hmm.
did one with me. I brought in a friend who was pregnant at the time, talked about doing it, during pregnancy. So there's so many ways to play with it. Be curious, right? The main
Yeah.
thing is to keep moving, stay curious, and keep nourishing yourself, not only through food, but through movement and nervous system regulation tools.
I love it. I fully agree. I am so excited to start incorporating this. Again, thank you so, so much for speaking with us today and sharing your expertise. And don't forget, for those of you listening, we have all of Kelly's links in the show notes. We're sharing her freebie called Inner Peace. It is nervous system relief for stress and anxiety. So you can grab that freebie. She's also shared the link to the Facebook group that she was just talking about, which is called Nervous System Regulation with Kelly Hale. So you can join that. And then you can find her on Instagram at Inspired to Wellness. That's the number 2, Inspired to Wellness. And you can find her there. Kelly, thank you so much again. And also, it's funny because this episode is going to be coming out on St. Patrick's Day. And you've got the red hair, you've got the green background. I mean, I could not have
Yes.
planned this better.
Happy St.
And
Patrick's Day.
happy St. Patrick's Day. I've got my shamrock
Yay.
earrings on and my green
Love
bandana.
it. Love
So
it.
it's just so funny. Lucky 13, episode 13.
Oh,
Um,
wow. I'm honored. Thank you. Thank
thank
you
you
so
so much,
much.
Kelly. This was
I've
great.
loved it. Thank you so much. I appreciate it and really love what you're doing.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. All right, my friend, I will talk with you soon.
Sounds
Bye-bye.
good. Bye.